Hello everyone. Today I'm doing a video of this late teens, early 20s Marelli 12-inch Bisa oscillating table fan. Now this is actually a very rare fan. I only know of one other example to exist, identical to this one, which is in Vietnam. What makes this fan so rare is the Bisa line that Marelli made was their 30 centimeter models or 12-inch models, which Marelli always cataloged their fans or named their fans due to their diameter, blade and cage diameter. Now this fan is the Bisa because it has a 12-inch blade and cage, but it has the larger diameter motor and taller base and yoke mount of their larger 40 centimeter Ghibli or 16-inch Ghibli fan. That's not what makes this one rare. What makes this one rare is it runs on 110 volts, 100 cycles. So I've got a voltage frequency drive right here that I purchased recently and got it wired up for this particular fan. Can't run it off of wall current, as that, at least here in New Zealand, is 230 volts, 50 cycles. But even with a step-down transformer, that would only step it down to 110 volts, 50 cycles. This fan needs 100 cycles to run. As back before electricity was standardized to 120 volts, 60 cycles in most of North America, and 230 to 250 volts, 50 cycles in most of the rest of the world. There were all sorts of odd voltages, ranging from something like 30 volts up to 500 volts, both in alternating and direct current. And then cycles, the more common versions was around 25 cycles, ranging up to 133 cycles. So this fan is from that time period when there were all sorts of odd forms of power, and this one would have been wound from the manufacturer specifically for a 110 volt 100 hertz circuit. So as power was slowly standardized around the world, these odd frequency appliances were no longer really usable, as it's very expensive to rewind these motors, and some can not even be rewound for different frequency, so many were obviously destroyed or thrown out or scrapped. So that makes this fan fairly rare. And when I got it originally, it had fallen off of a shelf of the previous owner in 2016 during an earthquake. This cage was all, crushed. The top strut was mangled, which is actually something I still need to replace, as while undoing it, it fractured there and it's still very bent up. So I'll have to get either a reproduction or a nice original to replace that with. The handle had one of these screws. Only one screw is actually holding the handle on the motor here. The other one had sheared off and the threads were still stuck inside. I was able to carefully drill out those threads without damaging the female threads of that section, so I'll be able to thread in a new screw once those arrive. These pivoting screws had most likely been sheared, as I got the fan with modern ugly Phillips screws mounting it, and this pivoting nut was missing. I stole those off of my other Marelli Euro project, as that's far more incomplete. I can get modern reproductions of those screws, or originals most likely, hopefully. And the screws holding this drive gear telescoping oscillator linkage were bent. I was able to bend those back into shape. Blades obviously had to be bent back into shape. There's some kinks, unfortunately, around the rivets, but the fan runs fine, so I don't mind that. And I polished off the original patina, as somebody had polished portions of the cage and the front side of the blades and left polishing residue all over the fan. So I didn't feel too bad removing the patina, as otherwise it would have looked awful. Anyway, I'll turn it to the side here. It's quite a heavy fan, second only to my Dayton toilet bowl oscillator. I believe this one weighs around 26 pounds. But all I did was polish up all the brass. I've always wanted one of these Marelli drive shaft oscillators, as in my opinion they're my favorite mechanical oscillators. I love that drive shaft linkage there. And what's really cool is when you tilt it, I'll have to loosen the adjustment knob here real quick. But when you tilt this motor, that's adjustable. So that's probably one of the coolest things about this fan. Just tighten that back. And then the head is obviously adjustable on the fan due to a ball bearing in the base. I also gun blued all the screws as they were all fairly rusty. Here's the back. You can see that massive motor. It's 7 inches in diameter, over half the diameter of the blades. And you'll not sure if you'll be able to see in there, but it's a 8-pole motor, so one for 100 hertz, twice the poles, and it's got a massive rotor in there. You can see right to the other side, which is pretty cool. Yeah, it's a very unique fan. Turn it back to the front without dropping it. But yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Didn't polish it a ton, as to get a mirror finish like on my Westinghouse vane, you usually have to sand the brass due to scratches and things like that with very, very fine grit sandpaper, and then take it to a polishing wheel. I did not want to do that, as I didn't want to take off any metal, so I just polished it to as best as I could, pretty much. And then the cage, I just used some very, very fine steel wool and brasso, just the finest stuff I could find, and gave it more of a satin polish, as I like the contrast. Anyway, go over here to the VFD. This is already programmed for the fan. I leave the dial on the max setting. I don't mess with the frequency or anything, just leave it. It's programmed to 120 volts, as it runs a little better on low speed with the slightly higher voltage. So we'll start this. You'll notice I did do some modifications, put some safety switches for the output side so I can individually cut off power to both leads, both to prevent a electrocution hazard, as these are very dangerous units if you don't know what you're doing or if you mess with them wrong. And then also to protect the fan motor in case of some sort of overcurrent. It'll fry the switch before it kills the motor. So that's on. Turn on both switches. Got power to the fan. And you will hear a slight chirp or buzzing sound, very high pitched, which that's just the carrier frequency on the drive. It's the cheapest unit I could buy. It only goes up to, I believe, 10 kilohertz. To get rid of that chirp, you have to buy a better unit that can range over 10. I believe 12 kilohertz is usually what works for most motors to get rid of that chirp, but it doesn't bother me too much, and I don't feel like spending the extra money. So anyway, we'll start this up on high. It's got a very cool startup sound and lots of power. Go back here and turn on the oscillator. Got a pretty wide sweep. Go down to medium. Low. It's got a really nice slow low. be pretty careful with that lever there, because I put it right behind the leading edge of the fan blades. So if you reach in a little too far or aren't paying attention, the fan will bite you. And then of course, off. Just turn off the unit. Alright, thanks for watching.